The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., casting an amber glow over the White House as Pam Bondi, the United States Attorney General under President Donald Trump, stepped out of the West Wing. The air was thick, not with humidity, but with tension. For weeks, whispers had echoed through the corridors of power about California's Governor Gavin Newsom and his increasingly defiant stance against federal directives. But today, something far more dangerous had surfaced. Pam's black SUV pulled up, and as she climbed in, her phone buzzed with an encrypted alert. It was from the FBI director. "Bondi, we have a problem. Newsom's latest move just crossed a line." She scrolled through the message and her heart raced. A classified intelligence memo revealed that Newsom had authorized a secret pact with foreign investors, rumored to have ties to adversarial regimes, handing them unprecedented control over key Californian infrastructure, energy grids, water reserves, and high-speed data networks. This wasn't just a matter of politics anymore. It was a matter of national security. Within minutes, Pam was on the phone with President Trump. "Mr. President, I'm on my way back in. We need to talk, this can't wait." Trump's voice, though familiar with crises, had an edge of concern. "I knew that slick-haired kid was trouble. Get in here, Pam. We'll handle this and fast." By the time she arrived back at the Oval Office, key members of Trump's inner circle were already gathered. The room crackled with energy as if history itself was waiting to be written. Pam laid out the facts with steely precision. "Governor Newsom has made a move that threatens not just California but the entire country. He's handed our enemies a backdoor into our critical systems. I recommend immediate federal intervention and I'll personally oversee it." Trump leaned back, his hands steepled. "Do it." And Pam, send him a message. Let him know just how serious we are. That night, standing before a bank of cameras in the DOJ's press room, Pam Bondi delivered a speech that America would never forget. Governor Newsom's actions have placed millions of Americans at risk. The Department of Justice will use every legal tool at its disposal to ensure that no one, not even a governor, puts our nation's security in jeopardy. Let me be clear, if Governor Newsom continues down this reckless path, the consequences will be swift and severe. The statement wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration of battle. The media erupted. Networks cut their programming to broadcast Bondi's chilling announcement. Social media lit up, hashtags like #BondiWarning, #NewsomBetrayal, and #National Security First trending within minutes. But in Sacramento, Gavin Newsom didn't flinch. Instead, he watched Pam's speech with a smirk. To him, this was political theater. He saw himself as the future of the Democratic Party, a man bold enough to stand against Trump's administration. In his mind, Bondi's threats were empty words. He had outmaneuvered them before, and he would do it again. His advisors urged caution, but Newsom waved them off. "Let her bark. We'll see if she has any bite." But what he failed to grasp was that Pam Bondi was not bluffing. The wheels of federal power had already begun to turn, and his next move would determine not just his political fate, but potentially the fate of California itself. Governor Newsom's actions have placed millions of Americans at risk. The Department of Justice will use every legal tool at its disposal to ensure that no one, not even a governor, puts our nation's security in jeopardy. Let me be clear, if Governor Newsom continues down this reckless path, the consequences will be swift and severe. The statement wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration of battle. The media erupted. Networks cut their programming to broadcast Bondi's chilling announcement. Social media lit up, hashtags like #BondiWarning, #NewsomBetrayal, and #National Security First trending within minutes. But in Sacramento, Gavin Newsom didn't flinch. Instead, he watched Pam's speech with a smirk. To him, this was political theater. He saw himself as the future of the Democratic Party, a man bold enough to stand against Trump's administration. In his mind, Bondi's threats were empty words. He had outmaneuvered them before, and he would do it again. His advisors urged caution, but Newsom waved them off. "Let her bark. We'll see if she has any bite." But what he failed to grasp was that Pam Bondi was not bluffing. The wheels of federal power had already begun to turn, and his next move would determine not just his political fate, but potentially the fate of California itself. Governor Gavin Newsom awoke the next morning to a state buzzing with tension. Every major paper splashed Pam Bondi's warning across their front pages. Attorney General promises swift action against Newsom, feds ready to intervene in California crisis, and the most damning of all, Newsom betrays America? The headlines felt like an ambush. But Newsom wasn't rattled. Instead, he doubled down. At a hastily arranged press conference in Sacramento, he strode to the podium with his trademark confidence, his tailored suit impeccable, his hair perfectly styled. Cameras flashed as he leaned into the microphone. "Let me make something very clear to the American people," he began, his tone defiant. "California is not a rogue state. We are a beacon of progress, innovation, and freedom. And we will not be intimidated by a federal government that seeks to trample on states' rights and the will of our citizens." The room erupted in applause from the hand-picked crowd of supporters. But beyond those walls, the reaction was anything but supportive. Across the nation, Americans watched with growing unease as Newsom framed his dangerous deals as acts of courage rather than recklessness. His speech was meant to shore up his base, but it had the unintended effect of further inflaming tensions. Pam Bondi watched the broadcast from her office, her jaw clenched. She had hoped Newsom might back down, issue a statement walking back his deals, perhaps even agree to federal oversight. But no, he had chosen defiance. And now, he had made what would be remembered as his fatal mistake. "All right," she said, turning to her senior deputies. "He wants a showdown? Let's give him one. Draft the federal order. I want it on my desk within the hour. We're freezing those deals, seizing records, and sending federal agents to secure critical infrastructure points. No more warnings." As the legal team worked at breakneck speed, Bondi picked up the phone for one more crucial call. To President Trump. "Mr. President, Newsom's decided to play tough. We need your green light for immediate federal enforcement actions." As dawn broke over Sacramento the following day, Gavin Newsom's inner circle was in full crisis mode. His chief of staff burst into his office, waving a thick folder of documents just delivered by federal couriers. "Gavin, this is bigger than we thought. Pam Bondi's team isn't just freezing contracts, they've initiated a full-scale investigation. They're digging into every deal we've made in the last 2 years. They're subpoenaing communications, financial records, everything. You need to call her. Now." Newsom shook his head, his expression a mixture of arrogance and desperation. "No. This is a political stunt. She's bluffing. We'll file in federal court, get an injunction, and stop her cold." But as the words left his mouth, the reality of his predicament began to sink in. Bondi wasn't bluffing, and the American public was beginning to see it too. Cable news anchors who once praised Newsom's boldness now questioned his judgment. Was Newsom's defiance a step too far? Blared one Sharon. "Federal action justified?" asked another. At the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi worked tirelessly with her team, her sleeves rolled up as she pored over documents linking Newsom's administration to questionable foreign actors. She had uncovered evidence suggesting that some of these deals weren't just reckless, they may have violated multiple federal statutes, from national security laws to anti-corruption measures. That afternoon, Bondi stepped before the cameras once more. Governor Newsom has had ample opportunity to cooperate and protect the interests of the American people. Instead, he has chosen defiance, obstruction, and dangerous partnerships. The Department of Justice will move forward with all necessary legal actions to hold him accountable. Her words echoed across the nation. In homes, diners, and offices, Americans debated fiercely. Supporters of Bondi praised her as the defender of national security. Newsom's defenders cried foul, calling it federal overreach. But even some of Newsom's allies began distancing themselves, sensing the political winds shifting. Behind closed doors, Newsom's lawyers urged him to make a deal, to release a statement pledging full cooperation, to invite federal auditors to at least appear conciliatory. But Newsom refused. His pride, his belief in his own invincibility wouldn't let him bend. He called an emergency session of the California legislature, urging lawmakers to pass resolutions condemning the federal actions and asserting California's sovereignty in the matter. But that too backfired. Moderate legislators, seeing the damage mounting, refused to support him. A few even crossed the aisle, offering to work with federal authorities to protect California's critical systems. And then came the moment that changed everything. Bondi's investigators, working with federal intelligence agencies, uncovered a secret communication between Newsom's office and a foreign tech conglomerate under international scrutiny for espionage. The message revealed that Newsom's team had agreed to give this company access to sensitive data nodes in California's digital infrastructure, data that could potentially expose millions of Americans to surveillance. It was the final nail in the coffin. Pam Bondi called a primetime press conference, standing before the nation with irrefutable evidence in hand. We can now confirm that Governor Gavin Newsom's administration engaged in deals that compromised the security of millions of Americans. This is not about politics. This is about protecting our homeland. The Department of Justice will pursue all available charges against those responsible, including Governor Newsom. The country was stunned. News outlets replayed Bondi's statement on a loop. Commentators who had once defended Newsom now questioned whether he had betrayed his oath. Polls showed a dramatic shift where once the country was divided, now a vast majority supported the federal intervention. In Sacramento, Newsom's world collapsed. Lawmakers abandoned him. Key aides resigned. And as the sun set, he stood alone in his office, staring out at a city that had once cheered his every move, now silent in its judgment. But Pam Bondi wasn't finished. The next phase would be even more devastating and permanent. The silence in Gavin Newsom's office was deafening. Hours earlier, it had been filled with the chatter of advisors, the clatter of phones, and the hum of confidence. Now, there was only the soft ticking of a clock on the wall, a reminder that time was no longer his ally. Newsom stared at the stack of legal documents that had just been delivered. They weren't warnings anymore. They were indictments in the making. Outside, protesters gathered. Some held signs that read "Newsom betrayed us," while a handful still chanted his name in support. But the tide had turned. The once adoring crowds that had cheered him as the bright future of the Democratic Party were fracturing, divided by the overwhelming evidence Bondi's team had laid bare. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, wasn't resting. The Attorney General had ordered federal teams to secure every piece of digital infrastructure in California vulnerable to foreign interference. Major tech hubs in Silicon Valley, critical water management systems, and even the state's emergency response networks were now under federal watch. The speed and precision of the operation stunned observers. Bondi had made good on her promise. Swift, severe, and unapologetically decisive action. Inside the DOJ war room, maps and data streams tracked the operation in real time. Bondi stood at the helm, her focus unwavering. "I want every vulnerability locked down," she told her top agents. "We're not just protecting California. We're protecting the entire country." At the White House, President Trump watched approvingly. In a call with Bondi that evening, he commended her. "Pam, you've done what few have the guts to do. You put America first, no matter the political cost." "Thank you, Mr. President," she replied. "But we're not done. Newsom has one more chance to come clean before we proceed with formal charges." But Newsom, cornered and desperate, made his final and perhaps most catastrophic mistake. Rather than seek peace or negotiate, he attempted to rally what remained of his loyalists. In a fiery speech from the steps of the state capitol, Newsom declared California in a state of constitutional crisis. He accused Bondi of staging a federal coup against a duly elected governor. He urged Californians to resist federal overreach and called for a legal war against the Department of Justice. The move horrified moderates and inflamed tensions further. Overnight, clashes erupted between opposing groups on the streets of major California cities. Businesses boarded up their windows. Governors from other states pleaded with Newsom to stand down before blood was shed. But Newsom, blinded by his own hubris, pressed on. Bondi responded the only way she could. "We gave Governor Newsom every opportunity to do the right thing," she announced the next morning, standing before the nation once more. "He has instead chosen defiance, recklessness, and rhetoric that endangers American lives. As of this moment, we are formally pursuing criminal charges against Governor Newsom and members of his administration who facilitated these dangerous deals. No one is above the law." Federal marshals were dispatched to Sacramento. Newsom's legal team scrambled to file emergency motions in court, but with overwhelming evidence and the backing of the highest levels of government, their efforts fell flat. Across the country, Americans watched history unfold in real time. Social media buzzed with disbelief, anger, and relief. Hashtags like #NewsomDownfall, #BondiJustice, and #ProtectAmerica dominated every platform. And as the sun set that day, Gavin Newsom's once bright political future lay in ruins, consumed by his own fatal miscalculations and the unyielding resolve of Pam Bondi. But there was still one chapter left, the reckoning that would define the final outcome of this unprecedented battle. Federal agents moved with precision, descending upon Sacramento in a coordinated operation that would be analyzed by legal scholars and historians for generations. Roads near the Capitol were closed off. Helicopters circled overhead. The entire city seemed to hold its breath as federal marshals approached the governor's mansion. Cameras from every major network captured the moment live, their feeds beamed into millions of American homes. Inside, Gavin Newsom paced like a caged animal. His lawyers pleaded with him to surrender peacefully. "Governor, it's over. There's no court in this country that will block this. Don't make this worse than it already is." But Newsom, the once golden boy of West Coast politics, couldn't let go. His ego, which had propelled him to power, was now dragging him into ruin. He considered issuing an executive order to the California National Guard to resist federal action, but even his most loyal advisors refused. "We're not going to war with the United States," his chief of staff said, resignation heavy in his voice. And so, with nowhere left to run, Newsom finally stepped out onto the front steps of the mansion. He raised his hands, defiant but defeated. The crowd of reporters surged forward, shouting questions as agents moved in, placing him under arrest. The image of the California governor being led away in handcuffs dominated screens across America. Pam Bondi watched from the DOJ headquarters, her expression solemn. She had never sought personal victory, this had always been about protecting the country. And now that the job was done, she felt the weight of the responsibility she bore. The United States had come perilously close to disaster, but the rule of law had held firm. That evening, Bondi addressed the nation one final time. Today was not a day for celebration. It was a day of accountability. Governor Newsom's actions endangered our national security and betrayed the trust of the people he swore to serve. Let this serve as a reminder, in the United States of America, no one, not even a governor, can place themselves above the law. We will always stand guard over our Constitution and our people. Her speech resonated far beyond Washington. Across red and blue states alike, Americans reflected on what had unfolded. Even many of Newsom's former supporters acknowledged that Bondi had acted decisively and justly. Editorials praised her courage and clarity in the face of an unprecedented crisis. "Bondi saved the Union," read one headline. "A victory for law over ego," declared another. Meanwhile, in California, a special legislative session was convened to begin the process of restoring public trust and ensuring that no future leader could exploit the vulnerabilities Newsom had tried to use. Federal and state authorities worked together to shore up California's infrastructure, making sure no remnants of the foreign deals could ever pose a threat again. In the weeks that followed, Gavin Newsom's trial became one of the most watched legal proceedings in American history. The evidence was overwhelming. Secret communications, hidden financial arrangements, attempts to bypass national security safeguards. The jury returned its verdict swiftly, guilty on all major counts. When the judge read the sentence, the nation exhaled. Newsom would spend decades behind bars, a once promising political figure, now a cautionary tale of ambition turned to betrayal. As for Pam Bondi, her approval rating soared. Americans from coast to coast saw her as a protector of the republic, someone who had put country before politics, law before partisanship. But Bondi, true to form, refused to gloat. In an interview weeks later, she summed it up in one sentence that echoed across America. "I didn't win. The people did."